Hi there everyone, this is Andy again, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about IVs and how they are fitting into the game right now and how they might fit into the game in the future, and really talk about if they're even something you really need to think about that much. So for anyone who doesn't know, IVs are essentially a measure of how strong your Pokemon is inherently. So you know combat power, that's the number you see on the sliding half circle that you can power up from your main Pokemon screen. IV is individual value, so this is something that you can't change. This is something that when you catch a Pokemon or you hatch it, it's just this is the IV from now till you either transfer it or you don't. So how it works is there is attack, defense, and stamina values that range from 0 to 15. And essentially when you calculate the IV, you put in combat power, the hit points of the Pokemon, and how much dust it requires to level up, and whether or not you have leveled it up or not. And most calculators will give you a range of percentage, sort of saying something like 60% minimum, 80% maximum, 71% average. And essentially what those numbers mean is that the minimum is the worst possible IV percentage, maximum is the best possible, and the average is just what it is the average of the possibilities, essentially. There are usually at least 10 possibilities, and sometimes more, sometimes fewer. But essentially the possibilities are just different ways that those values could exist based on the inputs that you gave the calculator. So powering up the Pokemon will help you get a more accurate reading, and you'll be able to eventually narrow it down to know exactly what the IV is. So how important is this to know? It really depends on how seriously you're taking the game. If you're a super casual player, I'd say it's probably not very important. You're going to get decently strong Pokemon if you're just basing it off combat power usually, unless you get really unlucky and get something with like 15 attack and 0 defense and 0 stamina, and you might just end up evolving something else then and just not even worry about it. Eventually you'll probably just end up, if you catch enough Pokemon and evolve them, you'll probably just eventually end up with something that's decent at least, if you're not even calculating IVs. But if you really do want to have really strong Pokemon, which is something that I'm interested in, and I know a lot of people are interested in, I think that IV is something that you should be calculating, at least for your Pokemon that evolve into top tiers. So, you know, Dratini, Eevee, the starters if you are collecting those, Execute, things like that, that are going to evolve into something strong. You want to get, for those, I think 90% or better. Some people are saying 80% is good enough because someone like calculated the percent difference between top tier Pokemon at 80% IV versus 100% IV at max level, and it was less than 5% in terms of actual combat strength, I think. But at the same time, that 5%, if all of your Pokemon are 80 IV, and say, theoretically speaking, I guess, this is dealing with like a potential player versus player battle. Say all 6 of your Pokemon are 80 IV. and you're facing someone who has the same 6 Pokemon and they're all 100 IV, that's going to add up really quickly, and you're going to get smoked pretty badly. Even if the difference is only 4 to 5% in combat strength between each one, that's going to compound and you're going to lose. So obviously, in the current iteration of the game, IV, where you're just dealing with gyms and pretty much combat strength and attack and defense and stamina all do play in, but not hugely when it's just this current gym fighting scenario. But in a future gameplay where you're either fighting against someone else real time, or fighting some sort of gameplay where it's a story mode gym or something, I think IV could definitely become more important, where you're kind of picking at like every little advantage you can get versus just throwing in something that's relatively strong into a gym to hold it for a little while. But as I said, that's something that probably isn't going to happen for at least a few more months, if not longer. So if you don't really care, you don't see yourself playing the game in a few more months, then just don't even worry about it. But if you want to have the best Pokemon ready for when that time does roll around, I think you really should be calculating IVs for top tiers for every Pokemon you catch. I think you should calculate IV for every Dratini you catch, absolutely. Every Growlithe you catch or hatch, I think you should definitely calculate IV. For the weaker type Pokemon, the Krabbies, the Pidgeys, stuff like that, it's hard to say. Obviously, these types of Pokemon will never have an extreme amount of use in battle play, but with trading, there is a chance that people will put a premium on 100 IV, 100% IV of any type of Pokemon, whether it's going to be used for battle or not, just because there are people who might want to create, who just want to have 100 IV of every type of Pokemon, essentially. That's theoretical. It might not come to happen that way, but it's definitely possible that someone would trade you something much better for your 100 IV Krabby just because they want it really badly. So if you want to do that, if you have the time to do that, that's something that wouldn't be ill-advised. I personally don't really care about that. I just want the strongest Pokemon for what it's worth. So I don't really calculate IV for most things unless there's something that I think will have a future use to me in the gameplay in a tangible way besides the trading like that. But yeah, I guess that's all I really wanted to hit on right now. I guess as a good rule of thumb, 80 is, I think, the minimum that you're going to want to have for IV. Better than 80 is pretty good. 80 to 90 is pretty good. 90 or better is what you should be really looking for, I think, for your top tiers. Especially since 93 it's not that uncommon. 91 and 93 are pretty frequent. You can get those fairly often. So I think you should really be looking out for those. I mean, those are almost perfect too. Like there's really not that much of a difference between a 93 and 100, because I think it's 93.3. It goes 93, 95, 98, 100. So you're losing like 3 points there. So that can be like a 14 attack, 14 defense, 14 stamina versus 15, 15, 15, but it's still going to be pretty good. Like, it's not perfect, but it's just about there. And it's not so infrequent that you're going to be wasting like insane amounts of time looking for this. Like, you'll probably get it not that long of looking if you look for a 93 or 91 and then just transfer after that. Or, as I said, I think it would be prudent for the top tiers like Dratini and Growlithe to really just look at every single one that you get, no matter what, because if you want to have the strongest, you should really just be checking this, I think. Alright, dragged on a little bit there, but thanks for watching. I'll leave the link to the IV calculator below, so look out for another video in the next few days, maybe a week or so. Alright, see you guys.